Update: am I the asshole for telling my wife her parents are not allowed to watch our son ever again? Link to original. First off, I want to thank everyone who sent me supportive messages and advice. I never expected my post to get so much attention. Since many of you requested an update, here we go. Turns out some of you were right, my wife was in on it. I confronted her a couple days after I posted and directly asked her if she knew that her parents planned this. She broke down and confessed everything to me. Mill had been pestering her about baptizing our son non-stop and my wife finally caved. My wife has been working from home during COVID while my job requires me to go into the office. My wife and Mill started doing Zoom meetings with MIL's priest to start the baptism process. They lied to the priest and told him that I was okay with baptizing our son but didn't want to be involved. The priest allowed it and they started doing online baptism classes while I was at work. My wife admitted that she planned it around our anniversary getaway and that Mill had somehow convinced the priest that her and Phil would be the only ones in attendance. My wife told me that I wasn't supposed to find out, but Mill couldn't keep her mouth shut for even one day about it. Their intention was to keep this from me permanently. I did contact the church to let them know the truth. I talked with the priest and he was surprisingly helpful. He said he would take the proper steps to make sure Mill is no longer welcome in their church and to reach out to the local parish to see what further steps need to be taken. I have yet to hear back from them on that. My wife and Mill are mad that I got her kicked out of her church, but I don't care what they think or feel anymore. These people who I love and trust had betrayed me and I felt a range of emotions I didn't know existed. My wife begged for forgiveness, but the fact that she didn't come clean on her own makes me feel she would have kept this from me unless I confronted her. She's willing to do therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. I don't know if I want to put in that work. I feel like there's no coming back from this. I contacted a divorce lawyer and started discussing what a divorce would look like and if there is any way I can add provisions to a divorce agreement that would keep my in-laws from seeing my son unsupervised. He's been very helpful, but I have not given him the go-ahead to actually file for divorce yet. I feel I am still too angry about the entire thing to think rationally and want to give myself time to fully grasp what a divorce will mean for me and my family. My wife and I aren't talking much. I pretty much go to work, come home to play with my son, go to bed, and repeat. I don't know what the future is going to bring, but I do know that without the support and help from people here, I don't think I would have the clarity I do now.
Your Mill still has control over your wife. And maybe your wife's eagerness to please her mother outweighs her loyalties to you.
Glad you haven't given the divorce papers yet, and you have a lawyer advising you. Do not make any decisions when you are angry. Take time to see if this is what you really want.
Word of advice. Comments sections in posts like these are always wildly imbalanced in favor of ending your relationship. This is the only thing they know about it. Don't let the comments here influence that decision.
Thanks for the update. I'm pretty sure that if you're divorced, you won't have any control over who your ex brings around your son on her time. I know that sometimes heavily influences people's choice not to divorce.
As someone who went through a divorce, I can confidently say to not make any decisions while angry. Give yourself as much time as needed to process and only make decisions then. Personally, cutting Mill out of your lives would be number one of my list to forgiveness, and it's almost a certain guarantee that your wife only did it to appease dearest mother. That doesn't take away her fault in this, but there was external pressure. Anyways, good luck to you and hope that it works out for the best, whatever way that ends up being.
She's willing to do therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. Right, so she's willing to do whatever it takes except, making life decisions for her child with the father instead of her mother. Good thing you're getting out of there, because once you calm down you'll see that there's no other option really. You and your son deserve much better.
Look, you need to accept that if you do divorce, it is very unlikely a judge will allow your provision regarding unsupervised visits for grandparents to be allowed. They have not harmed your child. They have simply had a priest pour water on him and say words. That is not enough to disallow them access by a court. Your feelings are valid and whatever you choose is your choice. But you need to be aware that the chances of that provision are highly, highly unlikely.
What a story. First, you did not get her kicked out of the church, they did. The fact that they can't see this is disturbing. She lied to her priest. This flies in the face of everything the church represents. The priest had every right to do what he did. This also means that in life, When something is important to them, they will do whatever they like, and the family and church be damned. That is a very dangerous attitude. I hope you can give us an update, and I hope you find closure and peace.
I can't lie, I feel worried for your wife. Like other respondents, I fear she is in an unhealthy relationship with her mom. I know you are angry at your wife's actions, but I think the anger should maybe be directed at how her mother has used religion to make your wife afraid, weaker, probably for her whole life. If, in counseling, your wife is able to realize these patterns and wants to break free, it could be a really beautiful new phase of your marriage, and you could support her as she develops more of her own identity outside of her mom. This is just a guess. You understand her better than I do. Good luck.
While I am glad you got to the heart of the matter and agree that trust has been broken, I think divorce is a slight overreaction from what I have read. Being a divorcee myself, I can assure you that it is not a fun process, and stuff like this damages children in the process. It is a last resort, it is financially devastating for everyone involved. I would recommend counseling first, and I would definitely recommend sitting down with your wife and her parents and tell them, in a civil tone, that this behavior is not acceptable. You don't interfere with their marriage, them interfering with yours is unacceptable.
I think divorce is a bit of an overreaction.
I would recommend trying counseling before going ahead with the divorce. Even without counseling, you have to be careful that your child doesn't misinterpret that it's their fault mommy and daddy are getting divorced. Of course it isn't, but children can't understand that. But by the end of the day, do what's best for you and your child.
I gotta ask, if you separate, what can you do to keep your son away from her parents? I know it's not my business, but seeing as she's already done it, I'm worried your wife will try sneaking around you again to bring your son to her parents' church. Edit, please don't get me wrong. What your wife did was terrible, and I completely understand your desire to leave her. I would too in your shoes. But if your wife breaks this boundary while you're still together, I'm worried about what her parents will do once you're only involved with them for the child.
That's terrible. You can't be in a marriage where the spouse puts her parents before you. I'd pretty much say, you either go NC with the parents or it's divorce time, before I'd even consider reconciling therapy. Tell her that any excuse making means the marriage is going to be punted. She lied to you repeatedly and conspired against you, and she needs to acknowledge both those factors.
This reads like our atheism fanfic.
To be the bearer of bad news, divorcing your wife will mean that she has even more control over your child's upbringing and influences than if you stayed together. She might decide to go the full-on religious route and send him to a religious school, church every week, etc. Also, there's no way you would be able to ban her parents from seeing your child. Technically, they haven't done anything legally wrong. They baptized their grandson with the help and permission of his mother. Honestly, I think a divorce is a huge overreaction. It's okay to be upset, but it isn't like your wife was having an affair and raising a secret love child. Her overbearing mother got into her head with all that Catholic guilt and eternal damnation rhetoric, and your son got water sprinkled on him. Your child wasn't hurt, hell, he probably won't even remember it much. That being said, I do think your wife doesn't have any right to be upset that her mom got kicked out. Although I'm willing to bet that your wife is getting an earful from her mother, which is why she is upset with you.
If was a one-time huge mistake, then I'd be open to forgiving the wife. The baptism didn't actually hurt or change the kid in any way. Turns out some of you were right. My wife was in on it. I gasped.
Since you have a child together, I would try marriage therapy to see if you can rebuild trust.
I think what your wife did was wrong, but you're really willing to jump straight past therapy to divorce over a little water and ceremony that means nothing. I'm sure the only reason your wife caved was because she was so tired of her mother hounding her that she figured even if you guys don't believe that it doesn't hurt the child and it'll get her to shut up. I very much feel divorcing your wife that you just had a child with is very much overkill. You should try therapy, it can help reveal if it's possible for there to be trust again. At the very least, it can help you guys process the divorce if you still decide to go that way.
Control freak much? Get a grip. Divorce. I thought religion was all about forgiveness.
I grew up Protestant and am now an atheist and understand why this would be really frustrating for you, but this one event feels short of divorce material to me. Your wife caved to her shitty mom on this issue, and totally sensible to be pissed off, but it was at an age where it's harmless for the kid, versus, say, sending the kid to Bible camp as an impressionable tween, and shows you MIL's true colors. I'm actually impressed by the church, though. Some denominations like Mormons have standing practice of baptizing people against their will. I'm surprised that some require at least parental consent.
What a cluster FCK. I'm glad you were able to find out the truth. I'm also glad you're seeking legal advice.
If baptism isn't important to you and means nothing in a religious sense to you, then why are you so worked up about it? The in-laws essentially gave your baby a bath and said some words. BFD. You are angry and want to punish in-laws. What is important is whether the in-laws treat your child well. Are they good grandparents? Does your child benefit from interacting with them? If yes, then you are being a stubborn asshole for no good reason.
I don't see what the big deal is, I think you're just controlling.
I'm gonna get downvoted, but as a fervent atheist, I think you're choosing a very weird hill to die on. They shouldn't have lied to you, but at the same time, it's a silly ceremony with some water and silly hocus pocus. You've chosen to deny your son an intact family over this. I don't understand. You claim to be looking out for your son. But, your decision will affect him for the rest of his life. Will alter his life tremendously. It's a dumb ritual. I feel like you should have been upset for a week and gotten over it. Now you've got a child with a fractured home and drama for decades. I don't get it.
Sorry to hear that your wife was in on it. Do what you need to do for yourself and give yourself the time to heal.
The biggest eye-roll story of my life.
I get the sense of betrayal, but it's absolute insanity to consider divorce over this unless you already didn't like your wife and were thinking about it before this happened. You clearly have your own issues to work out, so therapy might not be the worst thing, together with your wife or separately. Your kid won't even remember any of this. Baptism isn't a magical spell that changes his life forever, but divorce will. Can't you make your point to them of how they betrayed your trust and should have talked to you about it without going, "I'm sorry," a little insane?
You have every right to be hurt and angry. Your mother-in-law sounds covertly abusive, and I can see how your wife would crumble to the pressure to please her. It's a very complex dynamic. She's probably had this kind of pressure placed on her whole life. Emotionally abused children often spend their whole lives trying to please their parents. If this is the first time she's done something like this, I would give therapy a try to see if you can rebuild trust and she distance herself from the mill and see the reality of who her mother is. Divorce is absolutely brutal on everyone, so if there is any love left, it's worth it to try. Anyone else smell bullshit? So many holes in this story.
Thanks for the update, but maybe take a step back. I'd personally try counseling first, and even though it was a breach of trust, this should be something you can recover from with your wife. Will the kid grow up with separate parents because of a baptism? My parents divorced and I haven't seen my father in a decade.
Your mill did not have to tell you she baptized your son. If she were only concerned with the state of your son's eternal soul, she could have baptized him herself over the kitchen sink and it would have been between her and her God. No. She and your wife had it done under the auspices of the church and then threw it in your face. Not the asshole. One day, you're going to have to tell your kid that you divorced their mom because she got them baptized. Honestly, it does not seem worth splitting a family.
I like how she said that not letting her parents watch you son alone was not a decision that you could make without her. Yet she made the decision to have your son baptized without you and lied to the church about it. What a hypocrite. Good luck finding your way through divorce if it goes there. Put everything in the custody order. Clearly your wife can't be trusted to do what is agreed upon. At least in the future, if she does something, you can the law backing you up.
You did not get your wife and Mill kicked out of church. Their lying to a priest and baptizing a baby behind the father's back got them kicked out of their church. They are blaming you for their mistakes. They aren't owning up to what they did. Good luck.
Mine had a bris without my permission. If you love her and aren't religious, my advice is move on, if she'll agree to never do anything like this again. I'm 1000% on your side here. I threw away something great when mad. It took a few months to realize I was more outraged on the principle than the actual act. It was her and her mother wanting the best for the kid. I'd suggest taking to a therapist on your own and working through any feelings you have. Worst case, you delay the divorce a couple months. If you can move past it, then couples counseling. Best of luck, my friend. I'm thinking of you and the situation.
I'm going to be honest. If I was you, I could never trust them again.
You already wanted a divorce. Acting like a big baby.
I'm so sorry you've gone through that. Sometimes when I'm angry with a person, I'll write down everything I'm feeling in a letter to them. I don't usually send it, but getting it all out onto a page really helps me collect my thoughts and put into words the emotions inside me. Maybe that could help you focus your emotions.
LMFAO, imagine getting divorced over this.
I can understand your anger, but not being willing to at least try to salvage this is not fair to you, your wife, or especially your child. You honestly do owe it to your family to at least try counseling. As somebody else said, go yourself alone first, and then if you're willing, then try family counseling. At this point, I would even go so far as your mill is concerned, no contact for now, and tell your wife that if she wants this marriage to be salvaged at this point, then she must agree.
Funny how she's Catholic and saving her grandson from hell when they are a bunch of liars. That's why I hate these fanatics. They are hypocrites, eh?
Honestly, I think you should consider therapy for yourself, because regardless of divorce or not, this is something you may need help processing, especially your anger. Also, I know your wife is only agreeing to counseling because she doesn't want to deal with the consequences of her actions, but I truly think she and you will both get a lot out of couples counseling, even if it ends in divorce. This is of value for you and for your own future and that of your son, even if it changes nothing about the relationship with your wife. I am so sorry this happened. I like the suggestions from others and you getting therapy by yourself first. It might help you work through all these emotions you are feeling. Once you get some clarity, you can decide if you want to get couples therapy or divorce. This was a huge betrayal of trust. Many hugs and good thoughts.
While I do agree what your wife and Mill did is terrible, I think you should give the divorce 6 months. Wait out that time, and maybe try to go to some counseling with your wife. As a child of divorced parents, I want you to really think about how this will affect your son. Through counseling and time, you may be able to return to a happy, loving marriage, and that will be much better for your son than having divorced parents, trust me.
Holy cow. This was a lot. The fact your wife was planning to hide this from you and never tell you is a huge warning sign. The deceit and the manipulation was awful. If you were to have another kid, would the same scenario happen again? What about if something happens in the future? Do you think you could trust your wife to stand up to her mum? Next steps. Take some time to cool off and have a sit down to see if you could still want to make it work with your wife. Is she pleading to stay with you because of her religion and divorce is considered a big no-no, or because she wants you to stay? Sounds like now you're currently living separate lives, but whatever you decide, I wish you all the best.
Holy shit, you are looking to divorce your wife over this? Dude, you have some serious control problems.
Wow. That's rough. No words of advice here, because that's a deep betrayal by your life partner.